Let's talk about a few of these factors from the perspective of weight loss, because I feel like this is probably the main reason a lot of people find fasting, get into it, and then maybe stick around once they get to their goal weight and realize all the other benefits. So, if you're working with somebody these days with all the information you've accumulated over the years, talk about what kind of protocol you'd put them on to help them in a slow and sustainable way to start losing that extra weight.
Yeah, this is a wonderful question. Like we've been talking about, I think consistency is the most important thing. So consistency with the feeding window, find a feeding window that works for you. If it's 10 to 6, if it's 8 to 4, something like that, where you're cutting off the feeding window a little bit earlier. And then I really underscore this for clients that I do some one-on-one stuff, is making sure you're walking after meals. This is really an important thing to sort of curb and prevent all this what's known as glycemic variability. And that's really the problem. It's not, our blood sugar naturally increases and decreases when we exercise, when we go in the sauna, when we eat food, right? But you don't want it to be bouncing all over the place, and you want to minimize the variability there. And that's so important for cravings. That's so important for what's known as the second meal effect. So there's meal to meal changes, right? You have one massive meal with a bunch of sugar. You actually start to crave more carbs and processed foods for that next meal. So keeping that glycemic variability low by taking a walk after meals. And then most importantly, I think that is not really talked about. Well, it's getting more and more popularized, but resistance training as a modality to lose fat. And many people focus so extensively on cardio. I'll just share just a small, side story before we talk about the importance of weightlifting. So I used to be a competitive cyclist. I lived in Boulder, Colorado, had aspirations. I did collegiate cycling, sometimes rode 25, 30 hours a week. I wanted to become a professional. I was training with pros and got to the Pro 1-2 category in Colorado. But here's what's interesting, Jesse, and the reason why I want to weave this story into fat loss is throughout the racing season, I would see people that I was racing with get fatter and more heavy sometimes. And I thought that is so crazy because we are increasing our volume. You start training in December, January, and you start racing in March. And you go from riding, 1 3-hour ride a week to 3-hour rides every day. And you see people gaining weight. And I'm like, how is this even possible? So when people focus just on cardio, what tends to happen is you compensate in other ways by like reward eating and feeding. You start to say, well, gosh, I burned 700 calories in my spin class today. I can have that Starbucks, old fashioned muffin that I've been looking at or donut for a while. You start to make these concessions. And in contrast, when you weightlift, it's much more time efficient. You're not burning as many calories during the actual workout session, but the benefits come after. And so when if you go for a long bike ride and you want to burn fat, you're in zone 2. Okay, it sounds really sort of attractive. Like during the actual exercise, you're burning a lot of fat. Great, right? But what happens after the exercise, right? Because the exercise session is, for most people, 20, 30, 40 minutes. Well, the fat oxidation stops, but here's the difference when you do high intensity interval training or weightlifting compared to steady state cardio that many people gravitate towards when they want to lose weight. When you're weightlifting or doing HIIT training, you're burning mostly glucose. So then people think, well, I don't want to burn glucose. I want to burn my body fat. So therefore, I'm not going to lift weights. That's where we need to reframe our perspective, because when you're burning that glucose in the post-exercise window, the body will replenish that oxidized glucose and depleted glycogen stores, and it will increase fat oxidation to a much more significant degree for a longer period of time compared to just doing that steady state cardio. So I underscore and weave in these stories in the context because, again, many people are so focused. I got to lose weight. I got to go on the elliptical. I have to lose weight. I got to go for that 4-mile run. No, what you really need to do is lift weights and build muscle, cause some hypertrophy, and it's not going to make you bulky. You're not going to look like you took a bunch of steroids. Very few people have the genetics to, especially women, to put on all this mass and turn into a monster. Okay, so push yourself a little bit. Yes, you're only utilizing glucose and burning glucose during the actual workout, but the magic happens in the post-exercise window. And when you do a little HIIT training, when you do resistance training, you're less likely to have the post-exercise cravings and binging that is really common. Once we dig ourselves into a little hole, energetically speaking, and we burn 300 to 400 calories, that's when that post-exercise binge is more likely. And several studies over the years have found that women are a little bit more susceptible to that, meaning you go and do a big run. And you're like, you want to reward yourself for whatever reason due to maybe estrogen or progesterone. Women are more susceptible to that. So that's the other aspect of that's beneficial. Again, favoring weightlifting for long-term fat loss, long-term even cardiometabolic health. We can get into one recent study on that. But it's important to understand that you're not likely to have that post-exercise binge where you crave a bunch of junk and sort of negate the health benefits of your weightlifting program. So to sort of summarize, compressing the feeding window is an excellent thing to focus on. Walking after meals, it can be 10, 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a 17-mile walk. This is just short and sweet. You're getting sun in your eyes, which is favorable. And then weightlifting at least 3 days a week, preferably 4, and splitting up those workouts, doing some upper body pressing and pulling, lower body pressing, pulling. Brett Contreras has a great book called Glute Lab that has a lot of tutorials on exactly, periodization and sets and reps and different exercises and novelty in that. Andy Galpin did a great conversation with Andrew Huberman on, basically he said, basically when it comes to resistance training, pick 3 to 5 exercises, do 3 to 5 sets, 3 to 5 days per week. So it's really simple. Just pick some things that you like, do a few reps, right? 3 to 5 sets, 3 to 5 reps, 3 to 5 days per week. So again, very general advice, but it can be a starting place for people. And then the last thing, and it's not certainly the sexiest thing, is going to bed earlier, getting a good night's sleep. Various studies over the years have found that poor sleepers, these are people that work in the ICU, these are nurses, these are people that work the night shift. Generally, they have more fat than people who get good sleep and who don't work the night shift. So when we sleep, we're entraining that circadian clock system, and we are facilitating normal hormone release with regards to leptin and DHEA and cortisol and all these hormones that influence appetite, influence fat oxidation. So sleep is a very important one to consider.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
There was this perception on the internet for several years that you have to eat once a day. That's it. You have to fast for 22 hours or 23 hours a day to get the benefits. But that's really not what the human data suggests.